Have you ever met someone who is charismatic on the surface? You know, they seem very social, extroverted. They're always telling stories. They're very exaggerated with the way they talk. They don't seem to have social anxiety. They don't seem to have it. But they're fucking annoying. And when you first meet them, you're like, okay, you're funny or you're charismatic, whatever kind of opinion you form. But then it goes on too long. Sort of like being friends with a comedian. Yeah, they're funny to see on stage, but if they're cracking jokes every 5 fucking minutes, it's pretty annoying. Outside of that time when you're watching a show or you're on a podcast with them or watching a podcast with them, if they're constantly cracking jokes, it makes them annoying and it actually detracts from the time when they are funny. This is the same principle that applies to pretty much any quality that you can consider good when it comes to being social or dating. Charismatic, sense of humor, being sexy, right? Being overly sexy all the time or sexual, eventually you're going to be creepy because you're going to be in a situation where the person isn't enjoying it or you just do it too much. Even if they do enjoy it, you keep going on and on and on. Think of anything in this life. Extremes are unattractive for the most part. Everything has its time and its place. Now, not having any of it is also bad, right? If you're not charismatic ever and you don't ever show some flair when you're talking, well, then you're boring, right? But if I'm constantly doing this tonality in order to try and make an effect, like I'm annoying you, right? You've probably met people like this. And you maybe couldn't put your finger on why, or maybe you could. But let's assume, like, you couldn't quite put your finger on why they're fucking annoying. And then you realize, oh, it's because they're always doing the act. They're always in character. To the point where they're a caricature. I've been guilty of this. When I went to college and tried to become more social, some of the things that I had on my mind is like intentionally, like, I'm going to do this, was to be more fearless when it came to giving my opinion. So that involved debating and arguing with people on purpose or having offensive sense of humor in order to train myself not to shy away when I either embarrass myself or I offend someone or, any of these behaviors, being sexual, making sex jokes, not being afraid to, flirt with 10 different girls, right? I would have all these intentions that I did on purpose, right? Intentionally. But obviously, I overdid it in many situations, right? So I would tell too many jokes and I would be fucking annoying because some of them just wouldn't land. Or even if they would land, now I'm hogging the spotlight, something that I noticed when you are too charismatic. Even if you're really good at it, if you're constantly hogging the spotlight, you're going to be annoying. No one wants to see anyone on top all the time. You see this phenomenon with everything, with UFC champions, with, stars in any sport. It's like, yeah, it's cool to have them run their dynasty, but then eventually you're like, all right, this is old. They've won, 10 times in a row. Let's see someone else, So they were once cheered for, and now, people are cheering for them to get knocked out. This principle really just applies to anything, right? So, like, I'm overdoing my explanation right now, and I caught myself, and I'm like, all right, get to the next point, right? I think they got the fucking idea. But charisma is the one I want to cover right now. So charisma is kind of like an umbrella of different things that make people like you, right? I'm trying to use very simple language so you can really understand it on a deep level. So sense of humor, being flirtatious, being exaggerated at certain points, talking slow in order to really chew through your thoughts and your words. How do you know when you're doing it too much, though? When are you overdoing it to the point where you're going to annoy the other person? Either like in a social circle with like friend groups, or a girl that you're flirting with, you'll eventually get some intuition because like, for instance, one recommendation I would give to you is pay attention to their body language. Obviously, that's going to always be a useful thing. Pay attention to your audience. Are they enjoying it? Are they not enjoying it? Right? You're a stand-up comedian. Are they laughing? Are they not laughing? But are they not laughing because they're offended, but they really want to laugh deep down, and you see them struggling not to laugh? Or are they not laughing because your jokes suck, or it's the wrong crowd, and you have to play different types of jokes, etc.? I don't have that, for instance, with you, right? I don't see how you're reacting, but I can guess how you're reacting by my own emotional reaction to myself. Like, oh, okay, I'm starting to over-explain myself, or, oh, okay, I'm starting to beat that, joke to death, or, I can tell when my vocal tonality is starting to drone on, and I'm starting to do the same thing over and over, and I'm not really changing it up. Okay, I got to change it up. Get really fast with my speaking, slow it, or not slow it down, take a pause, right? Go really, really fast, talk about this, da-da-da-da-da, and then go back to being slow. And talk about this, and talk about this. You gain an intuition for when someone's probably not enjoying it. So you can, because the intuition is going to help you prevent getting to the point where you recognize that they're annoyed with you, right? Now, this seems like a very high-level, complex thing to do, and it is. This is a higher level video. It might be interesting to consider, but unless you have a certain level of self-awareness, which a lot of people tend to lack, I noticed this with a client that I went to visit recently. He definitely had some bad habits when it came to communication. And when I pointed them out, he was very defensive about it. But when I'm sitting there with him, day in, day out for a couple of weeks, I'm like, okay, this is something that you need to change about yourself because it is very unenjoyable to be around. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And it's going to hurt your ability to get with girls. His, for instance, was, he had a kind of a pompous attitude about a lot of things, a smarter than thou attitude. He had a kind of a whiny voice. His laugh was very hyena-like. So a lot of little things that I wanted to point out to him. And your ability to be actually charismatic is directly proportional to your ability to be ruthlessly honest with yourself and ruthless with your ability to change things about yourself, right? And I'm not going to get into the whole discussion of like, oh, I don't want to change, blah, blah, blah. I want to be myself. I don't care about those people right now, right? If you're willing to change in order to be more attractive, more charismatic, then this is a video for you. If not, it's not the video for you. But most people don't have that self-awareness to check what's wrong with them, right? So they go on YouTube to be like, okay, is this how you act? Is this not how you act? Right? I need to be alpha. I need to be stoic, blah, blah, blah. That's another one that's really popular right now, right? A lot of red pill stuff. Be stoic, be manly, don't show emotion, da-da-da. Okay. Take it too far, you're going to be boring. Hey, what's up? Yeah. Girls are going to think you're not interested sometimes. You're only going to attract really, really anxious girls who really need that. They perceive your withdrawnness as strength when really you're just, shy, or you're insecure, or you're overly controlling to the point where it's tyrannical, and not actually strength because you don't know how to communicate. A lot of things can happen when you oscillate between the extremes of anything, right? But if you lack that self-awareness, you're only really going to have their reactions. So there's really only two ways to kind of check when you're going overboard. Or I guess three, you just have a template, right? Which is what I'm trying to give you right now. But normally, most people only have, I pay attention to their facial expressions, right? I'm telling too many jokes, because I can see they're not in, they're looking away. I'm losing their attention. Okay, what have I been doing recently? Well, I've been joking a lot, or I've been telling lots of stories, or I'm kind of droning on with this one story, or I'm just talking too much in general, right? Oh, okay. Whatever preceded that reaction, stop doing it so much. Okay. Right? Or you have the ability to check before you even get there, which is self-awareness and self-criticism and willingness to go, yeah, I probably talk too much, or I talk too little, right? I don't give anything of myself, right? Or I talk too fast and I'm just, right? Or I talk too slow and Just check yourself. What extremes in my personality am I doing? And if I'm doing them too much, I'm actually less charismatic. I'm actually annoying, right? Because charisma is, I guess, persuasive has to do with like convincing someone. So, but charisma is kind of an offshoot. It's kind of like a cousin of persuasion. But instead of persuading someone to believe something or to sell something, it's your ability to make people like you. I think that's a pretty good definition of charisma. Is anything that persuades people to like you passively through your demeanor and your words and your behaviors. So if you're overdoing it, then you are going to actually have the opposite effect. But if you underdo it, then you're also going to you're going to be boring, right? Or you're going to be friend zoned if you're not sexual enough. So you just need to ask yourself, what extremes am I falling into? Too little or too much? And the answer is pretty simple once you start being really honest with yourself. Because if you don't talk a lot, it's, you're not going to be retarded and be like, oh, I talk too much. It's like, I don't know about that, right? But you won't develop that intuition until you spent a lot of time using your observational skills of checking whether or not girls like it or not. But if you're getting laid tons and lots of people like you, you're probably doing a lot of things right, but you could still be better, right? You could be a really popular guy and a lot of girls like you and a lot of people like you, but you also breed a lot of resentment, which is something that I recognized I was doing for a long time, right? I would hog the spotlight, and people would they enjoyed being around me, but at the same time, I would overshadow people, especially people who were not so outgoing or willing to be as open or confrontational as me, right? And I could see it in the way they acted. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because then you start having the question of like, okay, this is not even like, oh, should I change should I change myself to get better results? Like, let's assume you are willing to do that. But then there's another layer of it, which is kind of like, should I dim my own lights to allow other people to shine brighter? And that's an interesting question, because I've noticed that when I do turn the lights down and, turn the music down, it does allow other people to have their time in the spotlight, have their time on stage. But I've noticed that a lot of people, when they do get the chance to be on stage, they just become exactly what they were annoyed with, which is being a tyrant, right? Abusing the attention or the status or enjoying it too much. And it's always very interesting to see. And I've seen it happen a lot of times where I would kind of lower myself and then see how people react. And then other people would have a chance to. I would even sometimes, I would feign submission. This was an interesting tactic I would do for some people. Like I would feign being, or I would genuinely be in not a good place. So I'd kind of be on my own head, and then I wouldn't be as outgoing as I normally would. And then I would see other people kind of take the stage and then look down on me or act holier than thou or cooler than thou. And I definitely made mistakes being tyrannical in the past. But actually, for the most part, I would say that, I was pretty kind and compassionate to a lot of people around me. But even those people, when they had their chance to kind of have a moment where, I don't know, some girl liked them and not me. when usually I was the guy getting the girl every time, right? But, I flirted with some girl and she happened to go with this guy. He would really get puffed up like he accomplished something. And not in like a, hey, I'm proud of myself, which is great. Like, genuinely, yeah, fuck you. And it's like, oh, it's so interesting to see people act that way, right? And I would be like, oh, wow, I've never seen that side of them. Like, wow, they must have a lot of resentment. Or, they must really, really feel not so good a lot of the time. And so when I saw this behavior, it made me go, well, should I really be dimming the lights and turning the music down? Because, it seems like they're just going to, do the same thing I was doing, but a little bit more douchey. And it's like, well, okay, if it's really just a competition deep down, then, I guess I'll just be the one to win. Like, right? As long as I'm not going out of my way to fuck with people. But eventually I did learn that also was too much of an extreme, right? Now, these are very high value ideas. You might be not following along. I don't know. When it comes to stuff like this, actually, I don't have a good beat on it. I imagine some of you are experienced enough to understand what I'm talking about. Like, I don't think you're dumb. I just don't know if like you have been in these situations, right? But, or maybe I'm just really out of touch with the average person and you totally understand what I'm talking about. I don't know. But most people I meet are not. So, and I've met a lot of fucking people, right? But maybe this channel has accumulated a very specific niche of people, right? Who does think a little bit deeper and a little more nuanced with social situations. So I guess I'll just move forward assuming that you kind of understand it. Or if you don't, you're at least interested in continuing to hear this because this is very high level shit. But it was sort of another extreme that I found. So, this is a video about like, okay, just don't be too charismatic because it makes you not charismatic. Simple fucking premise, right? Where I explained that, if you go to the extremes, you become annoying. Whether it's a sense of humor, being sexy, etc., whatever, right? So just calibrate it. And the way you calibrate it is through gauging people's reactions. And then eventually once you gauge people's reactions enough, you gain an intuition and you don't really have to see people's reactions. You can just react to yourself and measure yourself before you get to the point where you annoy people, which is really, really useful. It's what a lot of entertainers use, comics, actors, interviewers, TV personalities, whatever. But then we have this next level where it's like, okay, what if I reach a threshold where I'm very charismatic, right, and attractive to people? And maybe sometimes I go overboard, but the negatives of going overboard aren't really that bad. The most that happens is I kind of just, some people get a little bit resentful of like the fact that I'm charismatic and I handle the spotlight really well. Should I really care? Right? Especially because, as I just explained, you kind of notice that when other people take the stage, they tend to abuse it. And this stumped me for a long time. But then I kind of found that I was still falling into an extreme. So the way that you kind of solve the puzzle there, once you do become really charismatic and you gain that intuition, is, first of all, just be very careful who you lower yourself around. If you notice that someone is willing to be kind of like, they're going to, take too much delight in having the spotlight, the way you react to these people is not to take the spotlight back. Because what happens is this puts you into a battle with them, which somewhat implies they're on your level. If you really, really want to be charismatic, when you meet people who are like, let's just label them as, I don't know, potential tyrants or, douchebags, right? Let's say you meet someone who's a douchebag. Instead of fighting them for the spotlight, you do want to show your personality to an extent, right? You don't want to just totally shut down because that really enables predators and abusers. That's a dramatic terminology, but it's somewhat true. You do want to like puff out your chest a little bit. Because other times I would go too far to the other extreme where I'm like, okay, I don't want to like shove anyone out of the spotlight, and I don't want to be a douche, so I'm just going to be really low key. But then I noticed it would just enable people to be douches more. So it's like, okay, I do need to show my personality and be charismatic, risk being a little bit too much. But then the moment that I notice someone is kind of pushing back, I will either just completely ignore them, right? Or if they're really, really insistent on, they're very kind of in your face socially, like, hey, what's up, man? Like talking to you. A really cool technique is to kind of silently mock them. Like, just look at them and laugh at them like they're a joke, right? But the only way you're going to really get this is I'm going to use a lot of phrases that are kind of weird, but they do make sense. Like, you just have to know you're better than them, right? For whatever reason. I don't know, whatever it is important to you. You have to have some sort of anchor where you're like, okay, this person is just a silly goose, right? It could be virtue. Like, you'd be like, yeah, they're probably pieces of shit. Or it could be you're better than this, or you get more girls, or you have more money. You got to have some sort of an anchor, right? The ultimate test should be virtue, whether you're a better person or not than them, right? And you can know you're a better person than someone without then thereby becoming a bad person because you're not humble. That's for the most part, that's silly, right? You can just be by and far a better person, right? But find some sort of an anchor where you know you're better than them, or the people around you like you better, which is a lot of times where the power comes from. And just kind of like look at them with this look like this, like, cool, man, like, yeah, awesome, and you don't have to like outwardly mock them, right? Because I try to advise these days not to get in any verbal scuffles, because it just leads to bad situations that really aren't necessary. But just kind of like, yeah, okay, cool, be cordial and be polite, and try to actually watch your tongue. And this is from a guy who would get in arguments and with people all the time. But you kind of just shut them out with like silent mockery. And when you don't fold to their pressure of their charisma, right? They're going to continue to pile on, right? They're going to go, okay, I got to raise the power level. And you're just like, yeah, okay, man. And you're kind of like One Punch Man when he fought Garo. If you don't know One Punch Man, it's great. You should read it. I mean, you should watch it too, but you should read it because I guess I'm spoiling something for you. But like One Punch Man basically can infinitely scale power. Like if anyone ever gets close to his power level, he just keeps scaling up. That's essentially how you want to be. Like the more someone tries to overpower you with their charisma, their sense of humor and getting attention, you just keep like, okay, whatever. Like I just won't fold. I won't become submissive around you. I won't give you any of those behaviors, any of those signals. I won't give you too much attention. Like I'll kind of box you out and shut you out. And he'll keep trying harder and harder, but his results will actually go down because of this principle of trying too hard, and then you look less successful, which is essentially the entire point of this video, right? You just try too hard and you actually look less powerful because you're putting too much effort for a little reward. And you'll the gap in your value, social value, so to speak, will be very apparent. And then they'll eventually just gas out, right? Because they'll just get tired of not getting whatever result it is they want. Because they are, like I said, kind of a predatory or tyrannical personality where they want control. And when they don't get their cookie, the thing that they're motivated by to act like they act, they're going to get deflated. And so you just keep up your wall, right? And then what you can do is you be really cool and charismatic with everyone else. Like when you get to him, you're very icy. Think, yeah, or even just like, okay, buddy. And then your friend, you're like, yeah, what's up, man? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Right? This is super, super powerful. And it'll show you who you can be your like self with. I'm just using a terminology. I don't really mean that. But kind of let loose with other people. And then those people who you can let loose with, when you do lower yourself, they don't try to take advantage of it too much. Everyone does it to a certain extent. Everyone has a little bit of, or a lot of evil in them. You just got to find whatever threshold you're comfortable with. Because I pay very close attention to people, and I can see it in everyone. Everyone. I mean, fucking everyone. I've never met a person I haven't seen it in very large quantities. You got to learn what your threshold of, tolerableness is. This is very, very abstract shit. How did we get here? I don't know, but it's interesting for those of you who are still here for the ride. So then you have the people who, can sometimes get a little competitive with you when it comes to, getting attention or getting approval or status or girls or whatever. But they're within a range of, tolerance. And with those people, you can actually somewhat lower your light a little bit, but it doesn't have to be constant. Like when they do have the room and when they do have the spotlight and they're talking, like give them your undivided attention, be very kind, and when you find something funny, like make sure they know, like laugh, like don't, be open to other people taking the stage. And this might sound overly self-controlling, like, okay, you're controlling how you laugh to other people. But here's the thing. Everyone does it. Everyone does it. You're just not aware of it. Like once you start really becoming self-aware and also aware of other people's emotions and how they behave, you realize that you calibrate a lot of your behavior already. It's just unconscious. You're just running background processes and you don't know how much of it is actually controlling you. And how much comes out of your mouth and you aren't even aware of why you said it. Like you're not aware of your own motivations. And because I catch people doing it all the time. I'll be like, hey, why did you say that earlier? And they're like, what did I say? And I'm like, oh yeah, you said that to that person. That was kind of like, I don't know, were you mad at them? It was kind of douchey. And they're like, I didn't even really think about it. They just like react. And they're not even like aware that they're calibrating what they're saying. Right, but they are calibrating because there had to have been an intention behind it. They just don't remember it. It just kind of like slipped past their consciousness and whatever, move on to the next thing. So we're always doing it, right? Because the only alternative is that you're a mindless robot who's just like spitting out reactions, right? So we're always controlling what we're doing. But if you can consciously control what you're doing and with awareness, and then also have that attuned with like compassion, like letting people around you, have their moments where they're a little bit, they're congratulating themselves or talking good about themselves, or, having a moment where they won a game or something. You're like, hey man, good job, right? Like let them have their moments, but then watch how they react when you have your moments. And you may have a lot more of those moments because you're a funnier person, you're a better storyteller, you're more enjoyable to be around, more girls like you, whatever it is, right? As long as you watch how they react and they're within that threshold of like what's acceptable, of like jealousy and resentment and envy and whatever, then okay, they're acceptable. You don't have to react to them the way that I kind of went over how to deal with those people. But if you do find them going past that limit and you kind of mark them as like, they're not quite a friend, then you can react in the way that I said, and you don't lower yourself around them, right? But you also don't become abusive, verbally and emotionally, obviously not physically, but you try your best not to be douches to them, right? And you do also want to try your best not to talk behind their back too much, but information sharing and gossiping does have its use, and everyone does it. Holy shit. And dudes can be even more gossipy than the average girl, right? But there are ways to skillfully use information sharing, or just call it gossip, especially when you realize someone's not a good person and you're like, tell someone else. Like I've recently found out a couple people that I knew, like I didn't know that there was a situation with our friend group a long time ago, and I was there to support one of the guys in the group. And I didn't know until recently that I was the only one in his friend group who actually supported him when he went through his situation. He went through a divorce. And all the other friends, because of the story, it's very complex, but they weren't there to support him. And I was like, I didn't know that. And I'd always kind of had them a little bit not as close as this one guy. But then I was like, oh, that's why. Like, I guess I was intuitively picking up that they're not the ride or die kind of friend. And I was like, fuck me, dude. Like, that's so weird to know that they weren't there to support him, because to me, it was very simple to support him, right? Or at least listen to his side of the story, because it obviously involved a different guy in the group. And I was like, holy shit, that's nuts. So, you need to be very aware of everyone you were friends with, their capability to... God, this has gone so beyond the scope of where I started this, but it kind of seamlessly rolled into it, because when you do discuss overdoing charisma, right, and the results of it, and then calibrating it, you do have to recognize what happens when you do start to pull back. Because if you're a person who overdoes it, not in the sense of like being fucking annoying, like a guy who just tells too many jokes and you're like, please shut the fuck up, but a guy who is genuinely super charismatic, and it's almost just like it's too much in the sense that just people are resentful because you're just too cool. Like, I know that sounds incredibly weird if you've never been that person, but if you have been that guy in your life where like everyone likes you, everyone wants to hang out with you, and people are da-da-da-da, it's a very interesting experience. The most telltale sign is when you're getting the pussy. I mean, having everyone give your attention, blah, 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 like who gives a shit, right? But when you're getting a lot of the pussy, that's when the resentment really starts. Like, seriously. Like, pussy and money, those are the things people will get so fucking jealous and upset about. And the story that I was somewhat kind of telling you about the friend, like, it obviously involved pussy, right? If there's trouble between friends, it's going to usually involve money, pussy, or power, right? And then power being, everyone's approval and attention and da-da-da. But pussy tends to be more powerful. Sometimes more than money. I would say actually more often than not. So anyways, this has gone totally left field, but not really. It just got very higher and higher level. And like I said, you won't really understand it until you've been in that situation. But I've met people who they do go overboard, and then I notice they kind of try to hog the spotlight, and then when you hog it back, they don't like it so much because they're used to being in that position. And usually that just means you have to level up your friend group. So keep all of this in mind. It's an incredibly comprehensive and complicated video. The simple point of it was, don't be too fucking charismatic, because it actually leads to you not being charismatic, which I suppose that means you weren't overly charismatic in the first place, because the only way you become overly charismatic is when you're just so good people only hate you for the fact that you're just stealing all the attention and all the girls. So yeah, if you're not getting the results that you want when it comes to making friends or getting girls, it's because probably you're doing too little or too much. And figure out what that is, and then calibrate towards the other extreme in order to balance yourself. So anyways, Patrick Castillo, girlschase.com. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. I have all my shit in the description below. Coaching is probably the most helpful thing for you. If you're interested in signing up for a consultation, do that with the form in the description, and we'll set up a call and talk to each other, and I'll give you advice like this that's super specific based on your specific circumstances, and tailor it in a way that you can understand it. So anyways, that's enough. Too long of a video, 35 minutes. Holy shit. All right, bye. I'll stop talking. I talk too much.